I'm here to bid farewell to Nigeria, to make sure that they are leaving our country, and to say to them, bye-bye Nigeria. Thank you for all you contributed in our country. We did not appreciate the wrongs that you have done, and we hope that you have learned a lesson. And we want to encourage them when they go to other countries, they must take care of other countries. Today we've got zombies in our street as our children because of them. And that has cut deep in our hearts, and that has made us to resent them with all that we have. And we hope that they take a journey safe. Next time they come, they know South Africa loves its people and its country.
Xenophobia doesn't protect South Africa. It actively ruins it. The economic aftermath of these continuous attacks is an act of absolute self-sabotage. Xenophobia does not eliminate poverty. It does not create jobs, and neither does it fix broken systems. What it does is create fear and economic damage. Right now, the silent exodus is happening across South Africa by thousands of African migrants after targeted ultimatums and street marches forced them out. Foreign nationals from Ghana, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and other African countries are once again finding themselves at the center of violent attacks, looting, intimidation, and forced displacement. Just days ago, on the 11th of June, the first batch of over 260 traumatized Nigerians touched down in Lagos, leaving decades of livelihood behind. But how did a nation built on the beautiful philosophy of Ubuntu, the idea that I am because you are, become a place where Africans are systematically hunted down with their safety stripped away? How did this keep happening? What does the data actually say about immigrants and South Africa's economy? For this, who is being blamed? And what are the arguments in favor of South Africans themselves? Today we'll look past the shocking headlines and we'll dive into the core reasons why this is happening. In recent weeks and months, anti-immigrant sentiment has surged across parts of South Africa. Reports from Reuters, Human Rights Watch, and other organizations show that immigrants have faced attacks, threats, forced evictions, and destruction of property. Several African governments have even begun helping their citizens return home because of safety concerns. The South African president, Cyril Ramaphosa, has publicly condemned the xenophobic violence and promised a crackdown on the vigilante group targeting immigrants, such as the Operation Dudula, March and March, and others. But there are speculations that the president is secretly in on these attacks as to why he has done absolutely nothing about it. Yet, for many immigrants, fear remains. Some have reportedly fled their homes and sought refuge in shelters and temporary camps after attacks in their communities across the country. The central accusation made by anti-immigrant groups is simple. Foreigners are taking jobs, increasing crime, and overwhelming public services. But is that really true? To understand today's crisis, we need to go back a bit to history. On October 18, 2007, a man was dropping off his teenage children at their uncle's house in Johannesburg when 3 South African men ambushed his luxury car, believing that any black man driving an expensive vehicle in that part of town had to be a wealthy Nigerian national. The attackers shot him twice at close range. The man tried to drive away, but tragically crashed into a tree and died from his injuries in front of his kids. That man's name was Lucky Dube, a global reggae icon who was xenophobically profiled by his own people who alleged that they didn't know who he was. In May 2008, one of the deadliest outbreaks of xenophobic violence erupted in Alexandra Township near Johannesburg. The attack spread across 7 provinces and over 135 locations. The perpetrators didn't target white people, but rather black immigrants. By the time the violence ended, 62 people had been killed and more than 100,000 people displaced. But 2008 was not the end. Another major wave occurred in 2015 and again in 2019. What makes this pattern particularly alarming is that each wave follows a particular script. Economic hardship, political frustrations, economic anger, and eventually immigrants become the target. A Pew Research poll conducted in 2018 showed that 62% of South Africans expressed negative sentiments about immigrants living and working in South Africa, of which 61% thought that immigrants were more responsible for the crimes in their communities. During the decades of apartheid, South Africa wasn't fighting alone. Frontline African nations, and particularly Nigeria, sacrificed massive political capital and millions of dollars to fund the South African liberation struggle. The Nigerian government went as far as issuing apartheid passports to South African freedom fighters so they could travel the world and build international resistance. This showed a deep and unshakable sense of Pan-African brotherhood. But when the political liberation finally arrived in 1994, economic equality didn't follow. Decades later, the ruling party, ANC, had largely failed to bridge the wealth gap, leaving millions of local citizens trapped in poverty, a collapsing economy, and rising unemployment. And that is when the narrative turned toxic. Instead of holding systemic political failures accountable, a dangerous trend emerged: economic scapegoating. This is the act of blaming a specific and stereotyped group for a broad societal and financial struggle such as inflation, unemployment, or even economic recession. Is the tactic used to direct public anger away from deeper structural and political issues. This was employed on foreign nationals who soon became convenient scapegoats. Human rights groups and researchers argue that migrants are frequently blamed for problems that have deeper structural causes, including corruption, economic stagnation, and others, to say the least. Even President Ramaphosa recently stated that poverty and unemployment, not migration, are the real drivers of public frustration. What started years ago as sporadic isolated riots in 2008 and 2015 have evolved into something much more organized and structural. Citizen-led populist groups and anti-immigrant movements have weaponized local frustrations for years. They march through communities claiming that undocumented migrants are the sole drivers of crime and the reason why public healthcare and utility systems are failing. Here is where the story becomes more complicated. Despite these common perceptions, research consistently shows that immigrants contribute positively to South Africa's economy and generally contribute more in taxes than they receive in public benefits. Many migrants also feel labor shortages, run small businesses in underserved communities, and create jobs for locals. And here is another important fact. Immigrants represent only about 4% of South Africa's population, according to recent census-based estimates. That means the overwhelming majority of unemployment and economic challenges cannot be explained by immigration alone. What is worse, Nigerian diaspora groups have pointed out a frustrating reality that many foreigners want to be legally documented, but the South African immigration system deliberately drags out renewals for years, making their reality equal to that of an illegal immigrant. And here is the twist that populist leaders aren't telling their followers. Xenophobia doesn't protect South Africa, it actively ruins it. The economic aftermath of these continuous attacks is an act of absolute self-sabotage. Xenophobia does not eliminate poverty, it does not create jobs, and neither does it fix broken systems. What it does is create fear and economic damage. South Africa's struggle against apartheid inspired the world because it rejected the idea that people should be judged based on where they come from. Today, many are asking whether that same principle can prevail once again. What are your thoughts? Kindly share them in the comments. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.